Good afternoon. Welcome to the May 6th Denver Landmark Preservation Commission meeting. I am bringing this meeting to order at 1 o'clock. First, we begin with introductions, or do I need to do audio? Let's do audio first. So we have some audio tips for any of you joining us virtually. For better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your device. And then from there, you can click audio settings to bring up an additional menu, such as adding background noise suppression, and then testing your speaker and microphone to adjust their maximum output volumes. For presenters or public commenters, when it is your turn to speak, you can mute or unmute by clicking on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. You can also expand the menu next to the microphone to access additional options, such as selecting your speaker and microphone devices, testing them, and again, adjusting their volumes. If you still have audio challenges, please switch to phone for audio. Great. Now we'll begin with introductions of the commissioners. I'll start. My name is Erica Warzel. I am a architectural historian and preservation consultant, and I was nominated by the community at large. Emily?
Hello, I'm Emily Hazen, preservationist and designer, nominated by City Planning.
And I'm Rusty Brown, an architect, and was nominated by the AIA.
I'm Larry Sykes, also an architect, nominated by History Colorado.
My name is Chris McInnes. I'm a forensic architect and I was nominated by the mayor's office.
Amy Amadon representing Landmark staff, and we also have Brittany Bryant helping with the presentation.
Great, thank you. First off on our agenda, we have a meeting record from our April 15th meeting to approve. Do we still need to do the vote? I thought there was something about, sorry,
Yes.
okay. So did any commissioners have any comments or corrections to make to that April 15th meeting record? No, right. All those in, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Rusty. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Larry. And all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, they are approved. Next, we'll move on to our consent agenda items.
Public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Can we move on to the next? Thanks. So this is our public comment period. For those of you who have joined us in the past, we're doing it slightly different nowadays, where rather than just accepting comments about historic preservation in general, we are also accepting comments on any design review agenda, business or discussion items on our agenda for today. This does not include our public hearing items, which will be accepting comments at that time. But for any of you who have a comment about historic preservation in Denver in general, or any items on our agenda besides the public hearing item, you can click your hand raise button in Zoom to indicate that you'd like to speak. You will have up to 2 minutes to do so. Or you can dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if you're joining by phone. If you're having any difficulty with these options, you can email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number. Do we have any folks joining us virtually who would like to make a comment at this time? Doesn't look like it. And in person. All right. Then we can move on to the consent agenda items. We have 7 on our agenda today. Consent agenda items are routine design review projects recommended for commission approval without discussion. Applicants with items passed on the consent agenda can coordinate separately with your landmark preservation staff to receive a certificate of appropriateness. There's no public comment for these consent agenda items. So first I'll announce the agenda items by address, I will ask if the commissioners have any projects they would like to remove from the consent agenda to discuss during our regular design review agenda portion. The commission members will announce any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interests on any of these items, and then we'll entertain a motion and vote. If your project is approved on this agenda, you can feel free to leave the meeting, but you're welcome to stay with us, of course. So our consent agenda consists of 2025-COA-287 at 3279 North Newton Street, 2025-TAXC-015 at 550 North Gilpin Street, 2025-TAXC-18 at 640 North Steel Street, 2025-TAXC-14 at 2435 Stout Street, 2025-TAXC-16 at 620 Ogden Street, 2025-TAXC-17 at 3016 California Street, and 2025-COA-262 at 818 32nd Street. Commissioners, are there any items on our consent agenda that you would like to remove to the design review agenda? None? Are there any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest? No. Great, then can we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you, Larry. Do we have a second? Thanks, Chris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, the consent agenda has been approved, and again, you may feel free to leave, but you can also stay with us for the rest of the meeting. All right, today we have a public hearing regarding a landmark application. So I will first open the public hearing officially at 1:08. The item is for 510 South Garfield Street, McAllen Kullish House. We will hear from staff about the application for up to 10 minutes with the opportunity for the commissioners to question staff. We'll also hear from the applicant for up to 10 minutes, again with an opportunity to question them. And then we'll open it for public comment. Anyone who would like to make a comment on this public hearing item, you will have up to 3 minutes per person. And again, you can click the hand raise option through Zoom or indicate here in person if you'd like to speak. Or if you have any trouble with the online option or dialing *9 to raise your hand, you can again email landmark@denvergov.org. You'll want to provide your name and your address. And then again, for up to 3 minutes, you'll be able to speak. And then at the end of that, we'll hear from staff for any clarifications and then close the public hearing before we move into deliberation. All right, Abby, take it away.
Thanks. I'm Abby Chrisman, Principal City Planner, and I am presenting today a landmark application for the McAllen Kullish House at 510 South Garfield Street. It was built in 1956, and the name represents the McAllen family who commissioned and lived in the house from 1956 to 1960, and then the Kullish family that has owned it to the present. Next slide. So you can see here the location of the property. It is just south of the city of Brest Park in the Stokes Place Green Bowers subdivision, which is part of the larger Belcaro neighborhood. Next slide. And here is the proposed boundary. So basically the boundary will follow the lot line of the property. Next slide. Next. So just a brief introduction or overview. So the power to designate properties was given to us under the 1967 Landmark Preservation Ordinance, which was designed to designate, preserve, and protect our historic properties, foster civic pride, stabilize and improve aesthetic and economic vitality, and promote good urban design. Next. And we currently have 365 individual landmarks and 60 historic districts. Next. So who can apply for a designation? Under our ordinance, it's a community-driven process. Applications can either be submitted by the owner of the property, by the manager of community planning and development, by members of city council, or by 3 residents of Denver coming together to submit an application. In this case, it is being submitted by the owner of the property. And in order to qualify for landmark designation, a structure needs to be either at least 30 years old or of exceptional significance. It needs to meet at least 3 of our 10 designation criteria. It needs to maintain its integrity. And our ordinance states that the commission should consider the historic context of the property. What context or what histories are the property associated with should be considered when reviewing the designation. Next. So here is a list of all 10 of our designation criteria. 510 South Garfield Street is being designated for 3 of these criteria. Under architecture, being designated under criterion C as having the visible characteristics of an architectural style or type. Under criterion D as being a significant example of a recognized architect or master builder. And then finally, under H for its ability to convey cultural understanding of how the site was used by past generations. Next. So I will go into a little bit more detail then about how this property has been found by Landmark staff to meet those 3 criteria. So first, criterion C, being significant as an excellent example of an architectural style. In this case, as an excellent example of the Usonian style. So the Usonian style was developed by Frank Lloyd Wright from the 1930s to the 1950s, with his goal to be able to bring modernism to the middle class. So these were smaller than his previous designs. They were meant to be more affordable so that he could reach, larger part of the public. So really to try to make good modern design accessible to more people. Key features as recommended by Wright, there should be a transparent wall of glass to connect the living area with a garden, creating indoor-outdoor space, a lot of connection to nature. There should be a compact central kitchen or workspace at the core. This replaced in his earlier prairie style designs, he had a fireplace was always defined as being like the hearth was the center of the home. And then in these Usonian designs, he moved that to being the kitchen, as the kitchen was going to be kind of like the hearth, the center of the home. And then also he recommended that there be a carport, kind of acknowledging that increasing significance of the automobile. So this is an example of a Frank Lloyd Wright floor plan for a Usonian house. You can see that carport there on the front of the house. You can see there that the house, they're looking at it, the entrance obviously is where the carport is on the right. And that side is pretty closed off with minimal windows. But then you can see, above and below that large, kind of a large terrace, a whole gallery of windows. You see this open plan connected living and dining space. You see that kitchen, or labeled on the floor plan as workspace, really being in the center of the house. And then you kind of see private bedrooms off to the side. Next. So here's some of the key features of the Usonian design as seen in a few of Frank Lloyd Wright's examples. So Frank Lloyd Wright's Usonian style, key features, being a single-story structure that's set on a concrete slab with radiant heating. So trying to be again, very efficient in its design, both, efficient use of space and of energy. They're generally closed off to the street with few street-facing windows, but large rows of windows on other facades. These are both looking at the rear of these houses where you can see these huge expanses of windows opening onto yards and gardens. With this, they really tried to blend inside and outside, and have very strong horizontal lines with flat or low-pitched roofs and deep eave overhangs. Next slide. And then on the interiors, the Usonian style features open, roughly L-shaped floor plans with connected living and dining areas, has lighting that's often integrated into the walls and ceilings, uses natural materials such as brick, wood, and stone, both on the exterior of the building, and then continues those same materials into the interior. Often creates really kind of dramatic interior spaces, especially with the use of lighting, and gets lots of natural light with clear-story windows, sliding doors, large expanses of windows, and skylights. Next slide. And here you can see then some of these same features in the McAllen Coolish House, which is also, we feel, an excellent example of Usonian architecture. So this is the original drawing of the facade. You can see following the Usonian style, it's pretty closed off to the street. You have a garage in place of a carport, you have the front entrance there, but then, it's pretty blank. You have a brick wall also that then kind of continues beyond the facade in order to provide additional privacy for the side yard, providing additional kind of division there between the front and the side and rear. And then you can see pictures here. You can see the large expanse of windows and doors there that open onto a private patio or garden. And then you can also see on the interior, that kind of dramatic space and the use of brick and wood finishings on the inside of the property. Next slide. So then on to criterion D, being a significant example of the work of a recognized architect. In this case, Joseph, commonly known as Gary Dion. So Dion was born in May 21st, 1921 in Lowell, Massachusetts. During World War II, he was in the military and stationed part of that time in Colorado. And then when the new University of Denver School of Architecture and Planning opened, he decided to come back to Colorado to enroll there, studying under noted local architect Eugene Sternberg. While there, he studied Wright's Usonian designs and even had the opportunity to organize a visit for Wright to come and visit the School of Architecture. So in the newspaper image on the right, Dion is on the far left side there with Frank Lloyd Wright. And Dion graduated in 1951. Next. So when he graduated, he had the opportunity then to go and work for Edward Hawkins, who was the developer of Arapahoe Acres in Inglewood. Arapahoe Acres had begun as a project of Hawkins and Eugene Sternberg. They had a falling out over the prices of the house. Sternberg wanted them to be a little bit more accessible to the middle class. Hawkins wanted a little bit more elaborate. And so Sternberg left the project, but then Hawkins hired Sternberg's student, Dion, to continue to work with him. And kind of Dion continued to work here part-time and then also had jobs at other prominent architecture firms in Denver, including Fisher & Fisher. But Dion worked at Arapahoe Acres from 1951 when he graduated till 1957 when Arapahoe Acres was completed, and designed approximately 35, or about 1/4 of the homes in Arapahoe Acres. That includes the house that you see there to the right, 3059 South Cornell Circle. That is a home that was designed by Dion to be his own home. So Dion also lived in Arapahoe Acres in that house there. And The majority of the houses done by Hawkins and Dion followed the Usonian style. And Arapahoe Acres has been definitely nationally recognized as a really significant work of post-war design. It was the first post-World War II residential district listed on the National Register. So the McCallum family, who were also Arapahoe Acre residents, hired Dion to design a home for them at 510 South Garfield Street. So they were living in Arapahoe Acres. The McCallums wanted a slightly larger property, larger lot. So they purchased this lot at 510 South Garfield and then hired Dion to complete a design for him. So I have this drawing is kind of on its side just so that you could really see the alignment, kind of the entrance is at the bottom. So helping you kind of envision that it has that kind of rough L plan. And in the central area there, but kind of between the two wings is really the central garden kind of patio feature there. So very, kind of, as you can see, private to the street, following the Usonian design, but with a lot of glass and connection to the side and rear yard. Next slide. So Dion's residential career in Denver was fairly short. It was just during that 1950s period. He then went on in 1963 to form a partnership with Stanley Morse, prominent Denver architect, and William Champion, who'd been another graduate of the school at the University of Denver. And they established a firm that was really focused on educational and institutional architecture. So these are some examples of some of the designs that were primarily Dion's design, but he worked on a large number of schools across this area. This is really a time when there was a big boom in school construction following the baby boom. And so he really did a lot of school designs. Stanley Morse and Dion and Champion became the prominent 1960s school architects kind of in the Denver metro region. After, unfortunately, Morse died in an accident on one of the building sites, then Dion decided to leave Colorado. He went back to Massachusetts and continued to practice architecture there. Next slide. So finally then, 510 South Garfield is significant under criterion H for being able to provide a cultural understanding of changing domestic ideals and lifestyles as represented in its Usonian design. All of Wright's work, not just the Usonian, very much came with a set of ideals of how Wright felt you should live in the house. And with the Usonian, he really felt, it should be simplified but comfortable, and it should have utility and beauty hand in hand. So he really had a very much of an idea of how a family would live in a Usonian home. And it meant being on a single floor, always open to natural surroundings with an open plan amidst simple, clean spaces. And these ideas of the Usonian design did also inspire some of the developers who were working at this time. There was Arapahoe Acres, completely inspired by the Usonian design, but then there's also some others like Crescenta Park, which also kind of took a lot of inspiration, and homes like the Eichler homes out in California, which also kind of adapted some of those Usonian features as well. So Arapahoe Acres was marketed as being low maintenance living, featuring all the comforts of a larger home in a more compact, affordable home with quality materials, radiant heating, and garden views. Eichler really promoted his homes as being a totally new way of living, or designed for better living, and being far ahead of other homes in design, livability, and luxury with an exciting, glamorous, contemporary look. Next slide. And you can really see all these features of this kind of Usonian prescribed way of life in 510 South Garfield. You can see it in all the kind of detailed designs, particularly all of the built-in cabinetry, because you wanted all of the clean lines. So when you come in, the entryway is all kind of just really clean wood hiding a lot of storage space. So really having that very thoughtfully and efficiently designed space. You can see it in the way, Eichler really promoted the way that a family could live, that you could all kind of see each other because of these, windows from the kitchen into the yard, and that it would really create this ideal family environment. And you can see that in the, kind of central kitchen. Those doors there show looking out onto that patio area and then from that central workspace. Next slide. So the McAllen Coolish property really has truly exceptional integrity. I don't think I have ever seen a house from this period that has such an amazing interior integrity as this house does. No alterations have been made to the exterior. There's no additions. I mean, the shingle roof has been replaced, but other than that, no significant alterations. And on the interior, no changes to the floor plan. It retains all its original brick and wood finishes. So really pretty remarkably intact. But it is and it retains its residential use, and it is in a residential neighborhood, but it is in a neighborhood that has seen a lot of scrapes and tear downs. So it really kind of now stands out even more for its kind of simplicity. Next slide. So for the period of significance and historic context, the period of significance extends from the date of construction in 1956 to the end of the popularity of the Usonian mid-century modern lifestyle. So to the kind of the end of that period represented by Criterion H, which is around circa 1970. And it's associated with the Usonian style, with residential development in Denver, and the promotion of a mid-century modern lifestyle. Next slide. So to summarize, so it's over 30 years of age. It has been found by staff to meet at least 3 criteria. Criterion C for its architectural style is Usonian. Criterion D is a significant work of Gary Dion. And then finally Criterion H for its ability to help with a cultural understanding of how the site was used by past generations. It retains integrity and it has also significant context links to the development of Denver. So staff is recommending that the LPC recommend approval and forward this on to City Council.
Thank you, Abby. Commissioners, before we hear from the applicant, do you have any questions for staff?
I have a quick question. I know a lot of the mid-century designations are talking about the landscape integrity too. Do you guys, does staff ever discuss that internally and have any consideration for that?
Well, because we don't have any ability to regulate landscaping, I mean, we only regulate hardscaping, but we have no purview over any plantings or anything like that. It isn't something that we give significant attention to because it's not in the designations, because it's also not something we really have purview over.
Has it ever been considered, is there any way to, has that ever been discussed?
It's been discussed. I mean, currently it would mean somewhat of a change in kind of our system and permitting, because currently all of our reviews are tied to building permits.
Yeah.
So we can only kind of tie to building or zoning permits, so it would be a modification. But we've certainly heard some from the community, particularly with things like significant trees and other things, that we've certainly heard an interest in having some protection for those, but we don't have that currently.
Yeah, I just have heard some discussion recently, like the Usonian style, the landscape was obviously part of that fabric as well, and a big part of it, and so I was just curious.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we're ready to hear from the applicant. Welcome. If you would please begin with your name and address, and you have up to 10 minutes.
My full name is Thomas Mark Coolish. I go by my middle name, Mark Coolish. I reside at 4750 East Cherry Creek South Drive in Glendale, well, sort of Denver, up in an apartment, G90, zip code 80246. But I have been spending most of my time recently at 510 South Garfield. I'm the youngest son of Jim and Betty Coolish, who were the second owners of the house. I'm sorry, was there another item you asked me to start with?
No, please.
That doesn't, okay. And, you know, thanks to Abby for her presentation and her work on this, this matter and this application. I don't have extended remarks to make. I basically would like to stand on what is in the application. And I appreciate your attention to that. But before responding to any questions you may have today or later for that matter, I'd only add that this is obviously the house I was raised in, along with my brother and my sister, so I'm naturally biased. But I will say, until I drafted this application around the beginning of this year, after, you know, 6 decades, I did not until then fully understand why that house was the way it was. And I do know it has invariably struck visitors not only as a unique house, but in an understated way as a calming and pleasant and inspiring space. And by visitors, I don't just mean social visitors that my parents would invite over, or people who would come for holidays, but anyone coming into that house, whether it was a housekeeper, a plumber, a piano tuner, invariably remarked, even up till now, remarked on how unique the house was. And I now know that's exactly what residential designers who follow the Usonian style, like Jerry Dion, intended. My parents, many decades ago in the late 60s, about 8 years after they moved in, did sparingly renovate the interior of the house, as you can read in the application, with a view toward preserving its character. And just as a continuation of that effort now, so many decades later, I'm requesting I'm requesting this designation to preserve not just the character of the home, but the home itself, both for its own sake and for the sake of the neighborhood surrounding it in Stokes Place and Green Bowers. Okay, that's all I wanted to say, so I invite any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
But thank you for your family being stewards of it.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we can hear from the public if there is anyone here in the meeting or with us virtually who would like to make a comment on this designation application. No. All right. Great. Well, I think then we're ready to close the public hearing and move into deliberation. Commissioners, what do you think of the application?
I mean, yeah, I think Abby said it best, that yeah, I've never seen such an intact house from this era. And yeah, the direct connection of the architect to Frank Lloyd Wright himself is pretty incredible. Yeah, absolutely deserving, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I hope you have kids or grandkids or whoever that can keep it in the family. I mean, it's a really great example. And I hope it sticks around in your family for a long time.
Yeah, I would just like to, again, thank you for bringing this forward. I think this is great. It checks all the boxes, especially in that neighborhood. As we know, there's been a lot of houses that have been torn down or very much altered and are prime examples of that after the fact Usonian way of living. So I really enjoyed that part of the application discussing what does it really mean to live in a house like this. So yeah, just wanted to thank you. I'll just note that I went to Everett Junior High, so it was kind of fun to learn about the architect after all these years. So I'm in full support of it. Anyone else? All right, would anyone like to make a motion then?
Madam Chair. Sorry, I'll hold this up. Pick up the screen. I'd like to move to recommend an approval and forward to the city council the landmark designation of the McCollin Coolish House at 510 South Garfield Street, application number 2025L-002, based on the landmark ordinance criteria C, D, and H, citing as findings of fact for this recommendation, the application form, public testimony, and the April 28th findings.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rusty. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, the motion passes and will be to the city council. Great, so we have one design review project to discuss. This is, so the design review process, I will announce the agenda. Commission members will have an opportunity to announce any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest. We'll hear from staff with an introduction and their recommendation, after which the commissioners may question staff. Then we'll hear from the applicant for up to 10 minutes, with another opportunity for questioning the applicant from commissioners. We'll also hear from staff for any final clarifications if needed, before we move into deliberation for a motion and vote. So our one and only design review agenda item is application 2024-COA-918 at 730 East 6th Avenue in the Alamo Placita Historic District. And we'll hear from Crystal.
Thanks, Erica. So this property is at 730 East 6th Avenue, Millis Cantina. And they submitted an application for 2 new sign faces, which were already installed on an existing 18-foot ground sign. So here you can see the signage of a previous tenant, Uno Mas, on the sign at the left. The current sign was reported as a complaint to the city for light glare and has an active enforcement case open, which is why the applicant submitted an application. The applicant stated the previous tenants used internally illuminated signage here, so they wanted to have the same, and they wanted to use the existing ground sign. Landmark staff informed the applicant that previous tenants, Uno Mas and Limex, for instance, had not submitted any applications for signage. So the signage the applicant was trying to emulate was installed without review or approval by Landmark and had not been issued any permits by the city for previous signage. The Alamo Placita Historic District Ordinance was adopted in 2000, and all new signage proposed after that date requires review and approval by Landmark. Zoning record research showed that the ground sign has been present at this location since at least 1957 and was originally a neon sign. Sign design was altered over the years and has existed in its present form since approximately 1979 at 18 feet tall with a 60-foot sign face. Landmark staff understands that the existing ground sign has been present and in use since that time, so is supportive of accepting the long-established and continued use of the ground sign, despite it not meeting design guideline 6.14J, which states that ground signs should be limited to 5 feet in height and 20 square feet in area. Next slide. So here on the left, you can see a drawing of the existing ground sign, and on the right, the proposed signage to be left in place. Both sign faces are a plastic polycarbonate with a digital print translucent vinyl, so the sign can be internally illuminated. Though staff is willing to allow the continued use of the overheight ground sign, staff believes all new signage should meet all other sign design guidelines. The sign does not meet design guideline 6.8C, which states do not use signs with plastic faces, although acrylic may be used for lettering and logos adhered to storefronts and for push-through letters. Does not meet design guideline 6.10B, which states do not use internally lit plastic or glowy box. Also does not meet 6.14H and I, which state that nighttime illumination, when nighttime illumination is needed, use focused external illumination, particularly in residential settings, and to not use internally lit plastic or plastic looking boxes. So Landmark staff is not supportive of allowing internally lit plastic box signs to be installed in the sign frame. These types of signs are not made of high quality durable materials, and our fully internally illuminated signs are highly discouraged in several of our design guidelines. And our guidelines exist to discourage these types of signs as they add visual clutter that does not fit with the surrounding historic context and are automobile oriented rather than pedestrian oriented. As an alternative, staff would suggest to the applicant that the sign face be changed to an aluminum panel with a digital print to meet the design guidelines as much as possible, while still utilizing the existing ground sign frame. However, the applicant would like to keep the signage that you just saw. Therefore, staff is recommending denial of the application based on the guidelines 6.8, 6.10, and 6.14. Additionally, staff has concerns about the precedent it would set. This internally illuminated plastic face sign was approved, as these are routinely denied by staff based on our design guidelines.
Thank you, Crystal. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? Larry?
Yeah, do you know, I know this isn't Landmark's purview, but if a sign, like if this weren't a landmark district, but the owner were replacing the sign, that would require a sign permit, right? Okay, and that wasn't pursued by the owner as
It
far as
was once the enforcement case started, because they got the
after
license.
the fact.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I don't think any of the previous tenants that have been here have applied for permits at all. I couldn't find any when I did any research. I think they just saw an existing sign and changed the face, as many. But
And I
they
guess,
still
yeah.
require permits.
yeah, okay, so that would not be allowed. It
Right,
would just
people
kind of
just
happen.
do it, but
Yeah.
they don't actually apply for the permits.
Yep, got it.
And so Crystal, the face of the sign itself, like putting that aside, the graphics or whatever that's on it, but the illuminated plastic box, to our knowledge or to your knowledge, when has that been in place since? Is that 1979?
It looks like it from the records that I could find. So it has been there a long time. I don't know if it was fully illuminated all of that time. But that the overall ground sign, the way it is today, appears to have been there since that time.
Thank you. Right. I think we're ready to hear from the applicants then. Assuming they're joining virtually.
So I have a question then in the interim. If this weren't internally illuminated and were illuminated from outside, would that be problematic?
No, they could do that. We do allow external illumination. As I mentioned in my presentation, it's this vinyl polycarbonate that it's printed on. The internal illumination is what we have the issue with. So while we're willing to allow the use of the ground sign to continue because it has been there in use, we suggested maybe just doing like an aluminum panel. That way it's just not internally illuminated and still have a digital vinyl print on the high quality durable material. And then if they want to add like external lights on top, they could potentially.
The reason for that is because of the look of it, or is it just because it emanates so much light, or is it both?
I think it's both. I think it's that it's not high quality durable materials. I don't know if you've seen like older kind of plastic signs over time, they get broken very
Yeah, they-
easily, especially.
They get
for
that
real.
yellow, they
Yeah.
kind of get yellowish,
Exactly.
yeah.
And then also the illumination, which obviously is an issue if someone calls them.
All right, well, it looks
So-
like,
The applicant, unless they're in person, there's no one online. It's just Kara online.
We submitted a letter, so.
yeah, right, so no one here is in person for this project. We did receive a letter, as Crystal mentioned, from the applicant. So I think that's kind of the conclusion of hearing from the applicant today.
So the
So,
commission can deliberate and make a motion without the applicant present. Just an FYI.
thank you. Okay, so, let's move into deliberation then. Commissioners, what do you think?
I think something probably changed for somebody to probably, in my opinion, right? If that's been around for that long and then, you know, if they updated it or whatever, or maybe they added additional bowls. I don't know, I'm guessing. But something seems like it changed to make it more bright or noticeable to the neighborhood or a neighbor to make somebody complain, so. I don't know, I'm speculating here completely, but it seems like something has changed and made that more noticeable to the neighborhood. And I can see where that may be a little bit of an eyesore.
So is there a methodology to grant a temporary approval to allow the sign to stay? There is not, okay. Chris say no.
Yeah, I guess my feeling about it is that, I think the staff report covers all the guideline related issues very well, and I agree with those points. And I think that if it's a question of economic hardship, we have a separate process for pursuing an economic hardship claim if the owner, you know, really can't make the update work from a business standpoint, but the way I see it, this was a choice to, you know, invest money in doing it this way without going through the permit process, which would have guided them to the proper way of complying with landmarks, and they made a choice not to do that, and I think that, yeah, it's entirely appropriate within the context of what we're here to do to deny that.
So just for clarity, the economic hardship process is just for demolition.
Never mind that.
Thanks, Brittany.
It clearly doesn't meet 6.8, 6.10, and 6.14, so I would recommend it fail.
All right, any other thoughts? I think, you know, there's 5 of us, so all would need to vote in one way, for there to be a quorum, for it to pass. So, it sounds like, I think we're all, on this, in agreement of how this does not or does meet the guidelines, but let's, take a motion and, see that through. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Give it a shot. I move to deny application number 2024 COA 918 for the plastic signage at 730 East Sixth Avenue as per design guidelines 6.8, 6.10, 6.14. Character defining features for the Alamo Placita Historic District. Presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Larry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rusty. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then I believe this motion carries and the application has been denied. Okay. Thank you. We are now We had a business item that was withdrawn at the request of the applicant. So now we're just hearing from staff on a few discussion items. So these are informational items that the commission can discuss without action. I'll announce the items and then we'll hear from staff on them, and then we'll discuss amongst ourselves and with staff. And again, no actions or votes will be taken at this time. So first we'll be hearing about an update of strategies to deter violations, which we've certainly seen a number of. And then we'll also hear about some CPD reorganization.
Again, Amy Amadon. I did not prepare slides for the enforcement discussion, so I'll just provide a summary of the memo that was in your packet. We as a team, Landmark Design Review, have been meeting monthly or more frequently than that over the last year or so since I joined the team to talk about process improvements of all kinds, lots of topics involved, and we have enacted a number of them, and we're very proud of ourselves for advancing and just improving some of our workflow and doing our best to reduce holdups on people trying to get through processes and just things like that. But one of the categories that we are very focused on is improvements to the occurrence of violations of the historic preservation ordinance. I know this is a topic of concern to many of you. You've mentioned to us disappointment as we bring items in front of you where there is no good solution. Work has happened on a historic property, something's been lost and really can't be corrected. And it is a pattern that is repeated quite a bit. We spend a lot of our time working on violations, hours. They're difficult projects, again, because sometimes the problem can't be fixed. Staff ends up investing a lot of time doing research, trying to determine what's changed. We're just taking on a lot of impacts on these projects, and it takes us away from other things that are good for the community in general. So those are among the reasons we're focused on trying to make some changes here. I'm going to just walk through the ideas that we have, and we'd like to know what your input is as well, especially as practitioners in the field. You probably know lots of things we don't know about how people approach some of these situations, so we'd appreciate your input. We are particularly in this discussion focused on, again, violations that impact historic structures. We have lots of violations where someone put a sign without an approval. That can be fixed. Yes, we will continue to find ways to communicate and try to deter that sort of thing, but this is about historic resources. So the first idea that we have that we'd like to discuss with you is that on upcoming agendas, you have, a standard outline of how you proceed through business from consent agenda to design review, public hearings, all of that. There'll be a new heading called violations. And those cases will be grouped together. And we're doing this, or we'd like to do this with your agreement for a few reasons. One, because we would like to shine a light on these projects, identify them for what they are. It is not with an intent of shaming someone. When we work with applicants, we're careful not to put someone through a process that otherwise wouldn't be required or delay them unnecessarily or things like that. We are trying to be fair. We understand that people have lives that have nothing to do with landmark preservation and that sometimes they really don't understand a process. However, we do, again, want to make it clear that this is work that's not acceptable. We want to encourage other people to take a different path. And so we think that grouping these items on the agenda and calling them violations or enforcement is helpful in that way. We are thinking of some code amendments in the future that might make some of these situations public hearings, noticed public hearings. We really don't want the path when someone's made a choice, maybe intentionally, to go around the preservation ordinance for the review to be easier. Again, we want to shine a light on these situations, and we think it would be a good thing if there were perhaps a public notice sign on a property that had a serious violation so that others in the neighborhood know that there are consequences for it. And reinforcing, we'd like a different approach, I guess, when people are trying to make an application for a project. We are working now on adding a new web page to the stack of things that's available on the city's website right now about landmark preservation. And it would be a page about enforcement. I think it would start out, we've sort of got an outline for it with positive messaging, resources for people who are taking on a project. Historic Denver has a contractor or historic preservation contractor list that people can make use of. You have to be a member, I think it's $50, and you get at least some guidance on who you might choose to work with. We just want to gather those things together for people who have no idea where to start, get them on the right foot. The other aspect of that new webpage would be talking about enforcement and what can happen. Your project can be significantly delayed. You may have to undo work. It's expensive. And we want that out there in front. We have a lot of instances where it's clear to us that people did know they needed permits and approvals and chose to proceed, and we want to deter that. We are meeting regularly with zoning and neighborhood inspection services, the NIS. We have one staff person in particular in that group who is assigned to the landmark team. She does all of our inspections. She does all of our postings of notice of violations and stays in communication with people, issues fines if necessary until we get to some level of compliance. Right now, the system is a progressive enforcement where basically ZNIS is looking for some level of responsiveness from an applicant or a property owner, at which point they will stop issuing fines. We do want to kind of talk about that. What level of responsiveness is needed? Are these fines, the way they're written right now, enough of a deterrent? Normally, the first fine, if someone has done something and isn't staying in communication with us, it's $150. 2 weeks later, you could be fined $500 if you're not working with us. 2 weeks after that, it's $999, and it stays repeated at $999. However, right now, just even a minimal amount of outreach to us to acknowledge, yes, I took all the windows out of the house, stops the fines in general. And that may not be getting the message across that we need. Something else we are talking about is charging application fees. Right now, there are no fees charged for any of the work that staff presents to you. And I think there's some good reason for that. We don't want people who own historic properties to take on any more significant burden than necessary, particularly people who are working with us. We'd like to be helpful and be here to help them get to permits and on. However, when you're talking about enforcement, where we may spend 20 hours coaching someone to get even a decent application, that is taking us away from work that's good for the whole community. And should there be some kind of application fee involved? So we'd like to talk about that. We are also talking about, and I think this is where I'll end the discussion of fees and fines, a one-time punitive, meaningful fine for work that is really past some point where the historic resource has had its integrity damaged. That would take a code amendment, that would take political will. One of the things we wouldn't want to do is sort of create a target. You know, if you pay this $10,000 fee, you'll get to do the things you wanted to do. That is a danger of all of this. There's potential unintended consequences of all of this. And we don't necessarily think that fines and fees are the end all be all, but we want to talk about it. The last part, maybe the most positive and exciting part that we have to mention, is the idea of a contractor licensing program. I created this in Aspen when I worked for the city of Aspen 25 years ago. It's still operating there. Pitkin County has it as well. And it was actually created using money from a fine that was collected from a violation there. We hired a consultant, created a training manual, and that manual is paired with some required reading, which is a lot of preservation briefs and things like that. And so on every project that involves a historic property that is beyond a certain scope, that's something where you have a GC, a superintendent on the site, they must hold the historic preservation license in order to pull a permit. And to get that license, they read the manual and they take a 50-question multiple choice open book test. It is not incredibly difficult. It is meant to convey some basic information, reinforce that you contact staff before you make changes, If you run into a surprise in the field, you contact staff, you don't just proceed. There's no fee for taking the test. It is a specialty license, just like a plumber or some other subcontractor might hold. The list of contractors who hold the license is posted on the city's website. So property owners can help identify who might be a person that would help them get through their project successfully. I posted the link there if you'd like to look at it. As I said, it was created 25 years ago. It was updated about 12 years ago. It is something that takes some effort. It should be refreshed from time to time. The reading materials could probably be slightly updated, but I think it's a good model and it works really well there. We have the support of the chief building official and deputy chief building official here to do something like this. And we're talking about how to roll it out. It might be something like we would introduce this and for the next 3 years, it would be voluntary. And then there'd come a point when it was required, something like that, where there's a ramping up to this requirement. And anybody who takes the test between now and that deadline would be able to market themselves. You know, I've taken this training. It's not that the city is recommending these contractors, it's that we're acknowledging that they've taken the effort to understand the program and that they might be a good choice for you to work with. So those are our current ideas. Again, you know, we don't want to overpromise because this is hard for us to tackle all of this list, and there are other people involved, and but we're looking for your ideas and priorities and things like that.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
I think that maybe on the application fee, if that were reimbursed at the end of the project, if it was successfully approved, that might be a little incentive.
Yeah, I think certainly some of the lowest hanging fruit is about kind of making the general public aware of this. And so I think your ideas about identifying them as such on the agenda, possibly, you know, posting signs in historic districts when a project is having been cited as a violation. I think those are all good ideas. Again, as you say, not to shame anyone, but to really just raise the level of awareness and that this is something that commission staff cares about and that it could very well come to the commission itself and have some serious consequences for the folks. So just kind of making that more of a something that everyone's aware of, I think is a really good thing to do.
Yeah, I really like this. I know it's the most complicated thing, but the contractor training program idea, partly because one thing I've noticed is that I mean, there's a general issue, I think, nationwide of contractors and skilled tradespeople sort of retiring and aging out and being not, you know, the replacement rate is not keeping up. And I think there are some younger contractors who are trying to kind of come in and fill that role, but they just really are not very well versed in a lot of cases with, you know, old school building techniques, so to speak, that often are more relevant in historic preservation. And so, yeah, they just go straight for whatever is the kind of like easy, you know, currently whatever like developer style way of building things. And I think the idea of having some kind of marketability for them too, I think would be, a lot of people would find that very helpful. So
To clarify though, it wouldn't be about like building methodologies, it would more be about LDC process.
No, it would be about best practices for executing historic preservation construction. It's about what kind of mortar to use, what tools to use, things like that. I do think we need to acknowledge people are not psychic, you know, we don't have contractors coming to most of these meetings. We're dealing with the design professional, may or may not stay on through execution of the project. it's handed over to someone who didn't hear any of these conversations, doesn't necessarily know what kind of mortar to use to repoint a historic building, and then we're upset that they didn't do it the way we wanted them to. So it's us being proactive too and being helpful.
I do have a comment about that. I'll start with that one. I have a couple, start with that one since we're on that subject. I'm involved in another project from a manufacturer who recommends they have preferred contractors. And I think that's what you're probably kind of recommending. And they're caught up in a litigation case for liability because they're a preferred contractor. And I think we should probably talk to, the attorney at some point about the liability from that. If that were to go wrong, that contractor would do something wrong and it would cost them money or something were to happen badly, that maybe the state or the city, I'm sorry, would be some kind of liability for that because they were recommending that particular contractor as they went through some kind of preferred contractor process. So I just put a little caution on that.
Yeah, I guess just compare it though to, we license plumbers, and that doesn't mean that we're telling someone that we've recommended that person. That's all this is saying this person has taken a test.
I'm just saying from my own experience
Yeah.
that I've been involved in a few of these cases before. And so I would just put a little caution on that. And just maybe kind of do some due diligence with that. One other thing, what was the other item? The website with community resources for preservation. I know there's a lot of HOA and community outreach organizations, in these historic districts that come in here and present to us quite often. I think it would be good to maybe get them involved and have maybe packages for new residences or in historic districts, because I think they're kind of the boots on the ground. And to be able to present new packages to whatever new residents may be moving in, or maybe bought the house or looking to develop or renovate or whatever it may be, to maybe that might be a good way to, because a website's only as good as somebody who actually visits it, right? And so having something that you can kind of be proactive about that, I think would be a good idea. And that kind of goes back to enforcement. A lot of folks can say, oh, I never knew any better because I never visited the website. So if you have something that you can say, hey, you were, given this package and gave you this community resources about being in a historic property, that could help with enforcement.
I think Jen's there, but we do have a postcard that we send out to help with some of that. Jen designed that. We do also do outreach to real estate agents and do like kind of what does it mean to be like a historic property, to do that kind of training. I'm going to on Friday do a Colorado appraisers to talk about ADUs. So we do as much of that as we can. Just an FYI that some of that stuff does.
No, I think that's great, Brittany. And I just think that you guys have like people, like free resources already there for you that could probably take some of that burden off of you. That you don't have to do that all the time. That's already like there, that you can maybe like have this package already in place, and that you can hand it to them and say, hey, you can do the work for me.
Yeah, we definitely try to do that as much as possible.
Yeah, anyways, that's a couple comments.
Thank you for doing this work.
Yeah.
It's important.
I was wondering about maybe some kind of an accounting of the different neighborhood districts who have sort of just a published list of this neighborhood had 7 violations last year, this neighborhood had 2.
I think just to add to Chris's comment about, using kind of even more local resources as far as like a neighborhood organization or what have you, that there's some power to that too, because it lets the people know that it's not just the city, and who knows when the city might be coming by to see what they're doing, but it's like an actual neighborhood concern that people care about this, so that seems to be even strengthening that.
Yeah, I would say there's one neighborhood that comes to mind where a lot of violations are cited, but I think it's as much because the neighbors are engaged and are reporting the violations as anything else.
Right.
Yeah, maybe they can be proactive about, stopping them before they happen.
Yeah, I think too, like the idea of the posting is a lot of times people they'll report these violations to us and then they don't know what happens after it. So that was like kind of the idea behind potentially posting some of these, is to let the neighborhood because most of our violations are reported to us by the neighborhood, let them know that like action is happening. Because a lot of times they're not aware of that follow-up.
One other thing that I forgot to ask about was when we have these, I guess, enforcement, in our agenda, what does that program look like? Or what do you guys envision that to be like? As far as, is there some kind of presentation by you guys and then we comment or discuss it, or how do you guys foresee that?
Well, right now on your agenda, we don't have to have any today. Violations are mixed in with other design review items. Design review items where the applicant reached out to us before proceeding. So it's really just kind of parsing things into the right category. It's not necessarily going to change how we present to you or what your options are to take action. It's just, again, identifying this following list of items came to us because work has already been done without approvals. And so you have that clearly in your mind as you're looking at the situation and, you know, wondering why some piece of information is missing or something. It's because this is work that didn't follow the process.
Following up on that, you had mentioned, and it's also in here about possibly some items or all items of these being noticed as public hearings. But it sounds like maybe if there's like a threshold that you're thinking would move them into public hearing versus design review type. Do you have a sense of what
I think we need to talk about all of this,
Yeah.
that we don't want to accidentally create more work for ourselves.
Right.
We don't want to overcomplicate something. Some issues are fixable. There are some circumstances where someone wouldn't have known they were proceeding improperly or something like that. I think we need to talk about what's the best way to use this tool. And as Brittany mentioned, part of the intent is that you take a code amendment to identify these certain instances as public hearings, and there would be sign on the property, and the neighborhood would be able to observe that there's any effect. They could attend a hearing if they wanted to. Yeah, Brittany, what did you have?
I was just gonna add on to like why we would have them separated out from the design review items. It's because oftentimes when they're mixed in, people who are doing the right thing and are coming to us are having to sit through these really long violation meetings. And so we want to like also respect people who have come to us first and to ask permission, kind of get those agenda items out. Like obviously don't quite know how we're going to organize the agenda specifically. Like this is, as Amy said, something we need to talk about. But just giving people more realistic expectations of where they would sit on the agenda and things like that is important to us. Also time management for these violations. Like for instance, Jesse spent a lot of time on a recent violation, helping us manage that time better for all applicants. Because public hearings are a little bit of a longer like posting process. If you look at our ordinance, we do have more time to work with those and sit with those. So that's part of the idea of like looking at it as a public hearing. Again, I think like the idea is to not bring every single violation as a public hearing. We can resolve many things administratively that we never bring to you as the commission, but I think the idea is anything that is elevated to commission review would have, you know, a special call out either on the agenda or potentially posting it, potentially making them public hearings. So those are the things we're kind of considering, is just better meeting management as part of this process too, and looking at how we organize agendas and place them on agendas.
It's almost like a non-consent agenda we need, right? Like we don't need a separate category for not, because I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher this name, what was it, Altman House, the Altman House that we looked at a couple weeks ago?
Amateur.
Apologize, but that was like kind of an egregious, right? Like violations after violations after violations, and that could almost seems like it could be administratively done, right? Like I think everybody on the commission was like, you know, that was really awful. And I'm sure that everybody on staff was like, "Oh, wow, that was really awful." And it's almost like one of those things could be read off and say, these are so many violations that, you know, it could be almost automatically not approved. I don't know if that's even in viable thing, but it's like I said, like almost like a non-consent agenda.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Chris. We'd have to talk to the attorneys for sure.
Everything else, right? You always gotta talk to the attorneys.
I guess one other thing to mention, you'll hear more about this, I think, at the next meeting, but we are at the point of releasing a draft of new design guidelines for windows in historic buildings very soon. And again, we'll update you more, but that is one of the most prominent violations. And I think we need to look at the part that we play in that. Why are people doing this without approvals? It may be because guidelines that we have are not representing the community's values. And so we are revisiting that particular topic, and we'll be putting that up for public comment and talking to you about where to draw the line properly.
And that'll probably be June, so more follow-up on that. We have a tentative date, but we're trying to work out with internally when we can get that posted with communications team.
One point on fees, as someone who works with a lot of smaller projects, is just that there are definitely, especially in the world of ADUs, because you have to pay a full sewer connection fee for every ADU, which is a pretty huge amount of money. I think that, yeah, there can be a sense of like a piling on of fee after fee after fee, and usually neither architects nor contractors know on a particular project exactly what to prepare the owners for. So I think that if upfront fees can be kind of, other options are available other than more upfront fees, I guess that would be, I think, helpful for a lot of the owners who are trying to do the right thing. But I also understand there are things to balance against that. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that was in the memo that reminded me, I didn't specifically mention, but you know, collecting a $50 fee from somebody for one of these projects isn't going to do much for us. But stopping work on their project, which is a tool that is not used maybe to the full extent it could be, does get someone's attention. And that really is what we're trying to get at, not meaningless, annoying fees that don't solve the problem, but meaningful deterrence.
Yeah, it's really effective. Time is a big deal.
Okay, thank you. We have one more agenda item, and thank goodness Jen is
Sorry.
to present it to you.
Excuse me, I had to step out because land use transportation infrastructure meeting for city council is at 1:30, so struggling around. I'm Jen Capetto, I manage the Landmark team. I know you well. Thank you for having me. I just, one of the questions that came up when I was speaking with each of you individually about things that we're doing and things you all would love to know more about was what is, how you all heard about a rework that we did and you wanted to know more about it. So very short, brief presentation. So prior to April 21st of this year, we had the executive director and senior leadership in community planning and development. We had planning services, we had development services, and we had the performance and operation. Planning services consisted of the long-range planning implementation, and the landmark team. Development services is building plan review, zoning plan review, inspections, basically anything that requires a permit and inspection. And then performance and operations is our colleagues, ops like Taylor, finance and accounting, GIS, other groups like that, communications. So that's what our structure was. You can see, oh yeah, next slide. Unless I can, yeah, thank you. As you can see, the Landmark team, which is two teams within one. So we have the planning and regulatory team, which is Kara, Abby, Becca, and Kate, and they do the, and Kathy, do the designations and planning efforts and tax credit, a lot of tax credit reviews, which you all see. And then the design review team, which is Amy and Brittany and Jesse, Crystal, and Andrew. You see them a lot here. Those are the design review team. So next slide, we were under planning services. Now they have shifted so that we have more groups, which is always fun. So we still have the executive director and leadership at the top. We have planning and policy now. We have zoning and landmark review, plan review. We have building plan review. So zoning and building plan review are now two different kind of divisions within. There's building and zoning inspections, which is a new division, site development and neighborhood design. That is your project coordination and site development plan teams. And they were previously in development services. And then strategy, operations, and performance, and public affairs and communications, which were previously in the performance and operations group. So now, next slide, the landmark team has been refocused so that we have the planning and regulatory group is within the planning and policy group, and the design review team is within the zoning and landmark plan review team. We are still a landmark team. This has not changed how we function. We are functioning the same way. The work is still the same. I happen to be now in the zoning and landmark plan review, even though I oversee also Kara and her team in the on the planning and policy side. So it's a little unique circumstances, but we think there will be some efficiencies and operational benefits to this as well. So that is all I wanted to share with you all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions?
It's very
So-
linear.
Well, it's not meant to be, it's meant to be a matrix reporting for those of you who've gone to business school, where we, instead of have up and down linear, it's now multiple people can make decisions and report back. And
That's how our organization works. It's very linear.
To try to, I guess, explain some of the purpose or some of the effect that we will feel you won't see. We always have known who our colleagues are in the zoning review group and could ask them, hey, is this garage in the setback, for instance, but now our connection with them is closer. And I think we are trying to work more carefully together so that something that we have led someone down a path to a COA doesn't explode at permit when they find out that they're over the height limit and blah, blah, blah. So I think it is good for troubleshooting. We want people to get to success. We do not want to make a process any more complicated or frustrating than necessary. So that's one of the things I think we are taking most advantage of is knowing each other better, knowing each other's roles a little bit better for the benefit of public who needs a permit.
And also, hopefully this will mean fewer administrative adjustments on the consent agenda that are after the fact. They will go together simultaneously, like Ashley's project with the bollards that you all reviewed on consent today, that Amy went and talked to our colleagues in zoning and said, hey, is this gonna fly? And they said, no, she's gonna need an administrative adjustment. So we were able to put it on right away, which is great. Thank you, Amy.
No, someone else brought it up, but that's, that just having that awareness of each other's rules and regulations, I think is an improvement. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. All right, so I think we are done with our agenda today, and so I will close the meeting.